So, I started watching this fantasy show on HBO called His Dark Materials. I went in blind, following my lady boner for James McAvoy. It was a suggested show, it was on my home screen. He was the face of it, so of course I was down. Right from the first episode, I figured out that it was a book adaptation, mostly because of the dialogue that was being used, but I couldn't pinpoint the series until I saw the alethiometer. And yes, I do have to say it that way. Why? Because when I say it normally, I sound like Steve Urkel. And it's just so fun and slightly sexy to say it the other way. For example, a lithiometer, a lithiometer. You see, it's just better. Anyway, it reminded me a lot of the Golden Compass. And when I looked it up, I found out, oh, it's actually a prequel to the Golden Compass, which was pretty cool. I'd never seen the Golden Compass myself, but I've always wanted to. So the fact that I kind of stumbled upon this was a happy accident. I won't get into the whole summary, as this is supposed to be a journal entry just for me and my feelies, but for the sake of context, I will tell you that this entire show is about a girl named Lyra Balakwa, later Lyra Silvertongue, and she lives in this parallel world where humans have animal companions called daemons. That's daemons with a D-A-E, not demons with a D-E. They are basically sort of an extension of their inner souls. She's an orphan. She's offered a better life. Her friend goes missing. Blah, 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 blah. A lot happens. From this point on, there will be spoilers. The reason I'm drawing about it now is because I was hooked once I saw the concept of daemons. Lord knows why I stayed, but the story hit me in every sore spot on the astral plane and then some. I mean, maybe it's because I wanted to know for my inner child's sake that Lyra would be okay. Despite everything she went through from the beginning to the very last episode, she goes through a lot throughout her time in the story that reminded me of what I went through growing up. It's just that I'm seeing these things from an outsider's perspective now and through a fantasy lens. I'm supposed to be removed from the situation, but it didn't feel like that for me. She goes through a loss of self, a feeling of hopelessness and helplessness, and she sacrifices so much for this one friend that she loves dearly. Even after he's dead and gone, she gives herself up. She chooses to leave herself behind for the sake of this belief and hope that she will not only see her friend again, but help him, despite this obvious divide between them. And by divide, I don't mean like they have a disagreement. I don't mean, oh, he's on that island and she's on this island. I mean, she is in the land of the living and he is in the literal land of the fucking dead. But no, let's charge forward anyway. She can still rescue him from whatever this darkness has in store. She rushes forward with this blind faith that she has to do this. Like, there's absolutely nothing that can stop her. She owes it to him. And it puts her into some terrible situations. She comes through it, but it's always at a cost. And sometimes I wondered myself if it was worth it. If I were faced with something similar, would I make that same choice despite having very, very similar feelings? Outside of herself and her inner demons, not daemons, she has this struggle of finding out that she's actually not an orphan. Her parents just fucking suck. They don't want her, or they didn't want her, or couldn't want her if they wanted to preserve themselves or whatever appearance they had. They were both selfish. They were unhinged. And maybe that's what gives her this unrelenting spirit that she has, because they're fucking crazy. So obviously she's crazy on some level. But again, it's not without some kind of heavy cost. She's always looking for validation, which is probably why she's so gung ho about rescuing her friend all the time. And she knows on every level she's not going to get it from them. But when faced with that reality, there's just this small part of her inside that wants to try, even though it shouldn't matter. And I get it. I know that struggle. It's one I face every once in a while with my own matriarch, and it's not an easy one to walk through unscathed. But moving forward, I'd started watching this show because of James McAvoy, but he's barely in the show. And when he is, it's kind of disappointing for me as a fan. Not because he does a bad job or anything, it's actually the opposite. He does a fantastic job of being a complete and utter dick that ruins his image for me. Like, I've been a James McAvoy fan since the movie Penelope. Like, I fell in love with him. And I watched him as Professor Charles Xavier, and it made me rekindle my love for the X-Men movies. He was also Mr. Tumnus in Narnia. He was also Kevin Wendell Crumb. But even Kevin Wendell Crumb had Hedwig. You know, there was always a redeeming part of James McAvoy's roles that made me love him. He's just too good at what he does. And this is perfect proof of it. He perfectly portrays this asshole that you want to believe in, but you know you can't. Like, a part of you knows that what he says is right, right? But there's no humanity or kindness to it. There's no better way to do what he's doing. There's just this need to be righteous and heard no matter who pays the price. He's a terrible role model and father. He kicks off all of these events, uses Lyra, sacrifices her happiness, her friends, and her fucking safety. At first, you want to believe that he wants her out of the way to keep her safe, right? Because on some level, he might care. Maybe. But he honestly just doesn't want her around, like at all, like ever. Like, he's pissed off when she tries to be around, especially when she finds out that that's her father. He's like, ugh, why? No. And then he tries to abandon her. And again, she goes chasing after him and she gets her heart broken every fucking time. And it sucks. It sucks so much. Like, you want him to have some kind of redeeming qualities, but he never does, ever. And Mrs. Coulter, who was his romantic interest once upon a time, is just as bad. It's like they were a match made in hell, a regular Harley Quinn and Joker pairing. It's the story around them and how it's shown to us as the viewers that made it difficult for me to watch sometimes. I wanted so much better for Lyra. I wanted her to give up on them. I wanted her to be unbothered by them. But she had this entire life planned out for her by this destiny that she couldn't avoid. There were several points in every season where I'd cried as if I'd been ghosted all over again. And I'm not over exaggerating. I'm not trying to over dramatize. It was a heartbreaking experience from beginning to end. It doesn't really do what other shows do. It doesn't start lighthearted. It doesn't ease you into this dark void, this drama that it has in store for you. It doesn't work you up to it. It just throws you into it and expects you to learn how to swim through the struggle of trying to survive through the waves. That being said, I had 3 favorite characters, 2 of whom were animals, of course. One being Pantalaimon, or Pan, Lyra's daemon, and Yorick Burnison, an armored bear. They were both sources of light for me through these dark episodes, and it hurt me most when some source of struggle involved them. Going back to what I mentioned before, with Lyra leaving a part of herself behind. Remember, daemons are a part of your soul. They are an extension of your soul. I don't have a daemon, of course, but I have my dogs. And they are 2 creatures that I'm very much attached to. I say it all the time, as much as Atticus and Soho drive me insane for their barking and all that stuff, they are chihuahuas at the end of the day. Without them, I would not be here. Someone needs to care for them, and that's something I signed up for. That's my responsibility. It's why I have them, as well as them caring for me the way our pets tend to, being my emotional support when I need it most. Watching Lyra with Pan reminds me of the way that I was with Atticus before we got Soho, while the quarantine was in full swing, when it was just him and I, mask up out in Soundview Park and Classen Point, isolated from the world and loving the sun despite what was waiting for us at home. The thought of leaving him alone or behind breaks my heart in a way that I could never, ever properly describe. And that's something that I had to go through and process while watching Lyra make that decision on purpose with Pan. That shit sucked. I understand why she did it. She had this visceral need to go and rescue her best friend or help him or whatever it was that was pulling her towards him. But it brings me back to what I said earlier. When faced with something similar, I don't know if I could ever make that same choice. Leaving a piece of my soul behind? That's just I don't know. And when she comes back, Pan is not quick to forgive her. Having gone through the trauma of being left behind, he has to process being abandoned by the other half of his soul. What must it feel like to be at actual war with yourself over the love you have for yourself and the love you have for your friends and your chosen family? That's insane. Yorick Burnison, on the other hand, is my favorite character for other reasons. He saw a strength in Lyra, and he immediately adopted her. He gave her a name. That's when she becomes Lyra Silvertongue instead of Belacqua. He was by her side. For better or worse, Yorick Burnison was now her father figure, basically. And he was joined swiftly by my third and only human favorite character, Lee, the hot air balloon pirate and grifter with a soft spot played by Lin-Manuel Miranda. Again, there's a lot that happens, but those two, they really gave me hope for Lyra finding a home and a family. A tribe, basically. I needed that for her. It's the only thing I hung on to when other characters died or when the worst happened or when everything was said and done. There's no nail in the coffin. They're still there. They're still watching for her. So I was hoping that at some point Lyra would just have that happy ending. She just had to. Again, I mean, this is sounding more like a review the further and further I go, but I'm viewing it as a hypersensitive gummy bear who cries at everything. So what the fuck do I know? It's a good show. It has a lot of good special effects. The story is pretty good. For me, watching the show wasn't escapism. And that's what I watch stuff like this for. I watch it to escape. I watch it to get away from my life stuff. It's like I walked into a looking glass trying to go to Wonderland, and it just put me in a parallel version of my own life. It was like a cathartic experience, but without the relief at the end. You know what I mean? It's, for me personally, it sucked, but I did like the show when everything is said and done. I was just a ball of sadness the whole way through. When we get to the actual end of it and it ended the way that it did, it made sense. You know, it's like, okay, she saves the world, she finds the love of her life, but she can't be with the love of her life. There's a whole explanation behind it, but basically they're from two different worlds, literally from two different worlds, and they can't be together. And it just makes sense. So they have to decide to just part ways. And I know that it probably pissed a lot of people off, right? But it reminds me of a cartoon that I watched a couple years back called Star versus the Forces of Evil. And this was an actual kid show, but or supposedly kid show, but it had a lot of young adult themes in it. And sort of the same thing happened where the main character, Star, and her love interest, Marco, they're from different worlds, so they can't be together. In Star, they just merge worlds and create chaos, and it's a happy ending. And they walk off holding hands with magic existing in the human world and fucking dragons flying around a elementary school or some shit. It's like someone writing their own happy ending and just slapping it over reality. But in His Dark Materials, they don't end up together. They don't decide it. It's forced on them that they can't be together because they're from parallel worlds. So they have to part ways. She's lost so much, right? And now she has to lose the love of her life on top of all of that and look forward to a life where she just hit puberty. She has to go back to school. Yo, you're really fucking just wiping the slate clean for this little girl? She's fucking 16 or 15, something like that. Like, what? But then it makes sense because that's how life is. It made me think, just because she's earned it, or more than earned it, she deserves her fucking happy ending after all the shit she went through. It doesn't mean she'll get it. Right. And that's something that people have been trying to hammer into my thick ass skull for fucking years. And I finally recently in recent years started to fucking accept that. It just makes sense. That's just the way the world works. You're not owed anything, you know? And maybe she's meant for something greater than saving the fucking world. I don't know. I don't know. But in this ending, she gets to live her fucking life the way that it's left behind after everything else happens. And it makes sense. It sucks, but it makes sense. And I'd rather have an ending like that than what we got with Star versus Forces of Evil anyway. I did love the show for the things I learned about myself while watching it. You know, the show made me question my own beliefs and values in a lot of ways. It made me wonder what my own daemon would be like. After a lot of thinking, I think mine would probably either be a large cat or a large snake. I'm not sure, but something along those lines. I love the characters that the show gave me. It gave me a deeper appreciation for some of the actors in the project, like James McAvoy. It is not up for question the talent in James McAvoy at all, whatsoever. Like anything his name is on, I will fucking watch it, despite how it might make me feel in the end. I've never seen something with Lin-Manuel's name on it that didn't involve music. So just seeing him as a regular actor, you know, portraying this character and being the heart basically in this show is just, it was nice, you know, and it's nice to see that he has talent outside of music, which I didn't really hold into question, but that just It's like having your cherry on top of a sundae, you know what I mean? And despite all of that, I'm probably not gonna watch the show again ever. Like I'll suggest it to other people. I just don't think I physically can. Like I will dehydrate. No, I'm okay. Um, but yeah. So I think that's all I have to say. I just rambled through this whole thing for fucking 25 minutes, and now I have to cut it down. So I hope you got something from this. I hope you're having a good week.